Welcome to Tell Me More Stories Told as Podcast.
It's great to be here.
Today, we're diving deep, really deep, into the heart of Mexico. Forget the dusty textbooks. We're chasing the vibrant story.
Absolutely. A story of ancient empires, dramatic conquests, and a nation just constantly reshaping itself.
We want to uncover those surprising facts, those insights that give you, our listener, a real shortcut to understanding this incredible country.
Yeah, our mission today is basically to sift through, tons of history and culture and pull out the most compelling bits.
We'll navigate through those ancient roots, the Spanish arrival, the revolutions, the modern shifts.
It's going to be quite a journey from Mesoamerica's dawn right up to today.
Exactly. We're aiming for those aha moments where the complex pieces just click together for you. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it. So where do we start? Way back.
How far back are we talking?
We're talking human presence from at least 10,000 years BC, maybe earlier.
Oh.
But the really big deal, Mesoamerica.
Which is mostly within modern Mexico, right?
Right. And it's one of only 6 places on Earth where civilization just sparked independently.
Wow. Okay, that's huge. One of the cradles of civilization right here.
Exactly. And think about the food. Maize, tomatoes, beans, staples for, well, billions now.
Domesticated right there.
Yep, around 5000 BC. And that's the game changer. Agriculture allowed surpluses, settled villages, the whole foundation.
So Mexico literally fed the development of these early societies.
In a very real way, yes, it provided the building blocks.
Okay, so before the big famous names, what characterized this early formative period?
You start seeing these unique cultural traits emerge. Distinct religious ideas, symbolic traditions.
Architecture.
Definitely. Early forms, but recognizable styles. And advanced agriculture, of course. Plus this fascinating number system.
Oh yeah, the base 20 system.
The vigesimal system, exactly. Influenced their calendars, their math. Really fundamental.
And then come the Olmecs, the mother culture.
Sort of, yeah. They flourish on the Gulf Coast from about 1500 BC. The first really complex society we see there.
What makes them stand out?
Their art is iconic, those colossal heads, Jaguar motifs in their religion, big ceremonial centers, their influence just spreads.
Setting the stage for others, like the Maya and Zapotec.
Precisely. In the pre-classical period, you get these amazing centers, rising Calakmul for the Maya, Monte Alban for the Zapotec.
High up in the Oaxaca mountains, Monte Alban. Incredible location.
And politically complex.
Yeah.
But also, crucially, this is where we see the first true writing systems in Mesoamerica emerge.
Real writing, like beyond just symbol.
Yeah, developed by cultures like the Olmec, the Zapotec, recording history, knowledge. It's a massive leap.
And the Maya famously took that to another level.
Oh, absolutely. The classic Maya hieroglyphic script, that's the peak, from around 250 AD to 900 AD.
So we get actual written histories from them.
Detailed ones. Rulers, dynasties, religious beliefs, key events is an incredible window into their world.
Meanwhile, over in central Mexico, Teotihuacan is rising.
Teotihuacan. Even the ruins today are just awe-inspiring.
What was its deal?
During the classic period, say 1 AD to 500 AD, it becomes this dominant force. Military, commercial. Huge.
How huge are we talking?
Maybe 150,000 inhabitants at its peak.
Yeah.
Think about that. In that era.
That's staggering. One of the world's biggest cities then.
Easily. The 6th largest, some estimate. With those massive pyramids, the sun, the moon, the scale is just immense.
But empires rise and fall. What happened after Teotihuacan's collapse around 600 AD?
Things get a bit more fragmented. Different centers vying for power. And this is when the Nahua people start migrating south.
Or the north.
Yeah. And over time, they become dominant in central Mexico, influencing or displacing earlier Otomanguean speakers.
And these Nahua speakers, they include the groups that eventually form the Aztec Empire.
Exactly. But first, in the post-classic era, you have the Toltecs who become dominant in central Mexico, known for their warrior culture.
And elsewhere.
The Mixtecs are flourishing in Oaxaca, amazing craftspeople, famous codices, and Maya centers like Chichen Itza and Mayapan are still very important.
And then the Aztecs, or Mexico, right?
Right, the Mexica. They arrive relatively late, establish themselves on Lake Texcoco, Tenochtitlan.
The island city, the one that amazed the Spanish.
Precisely. And from that base, they build this powerful empire incredibly quickly, stretching from central Mexico down towards Guatemala.
And here's the fun fact we talked about.
Get this. At its peak, Mexico Tenochtitlan was the largest city in the entire Americas. Bigger than anything else.
Incredible. Canals, temples, markets.
A thriving metropolis. A testament to their organization, their ingenuity, long before Europeans showed up.
Okay, so we have this incredibly rich mosaic of civilizations. Then, 1519. Everything changes.
Dramatically. The Spanish had poked around earlier, like Grijalva in 1518. But February 1519, Hernan Cortés lands, founds Veracruz.
And that's the start of the conquest of the Aztec Empire.
The beginning of the end for the Aztec world, as it was known.
How did such a small Spanish force manage it against such a vast empire?
Several key things. Disease was huge: smallpox, measles. The indigenous population had no immunity. It was devastating.
A biological weapon, unintentionally.
Tragically, yes. Then you have superior Spanish weaponry steel, horses, firearms. And Cortés was politically shrewd.
He made alliances.
Crucially, yes. He exploited existing rivalries, allied with groups who resented Aztec rule, like the Tlaxcalans.
So it wasn't just Spanish versus Aztecs.
Not at all. It was far more complex. After a brutal siege, Tenochtitlan falls in 1521.
And Mexico City rises on its ruins, beginning 300 years of colonial rule.
The era of New Spain.
What made New Spain so important to the Spanish Empire? It became a powerhouse, didn't it?
Absolutely. Two main things. First, the large organized indigenous populations. They provided tribute, labor, though often forced and exploitative.
Second.
Silver. Massive silver deposits discovered in the north, like Zacatecas. This funded Spain's ambitions back in Europe. Immense wealth.
So exploitation of people and resources fueling the empire. How is it governed?
Directly by the Spanish crown through the Council of the Andes back in Spain. In Mexico, you had high courts, the audiencia.
And the viceroy.
Established in 1535. The viceroy was the king's personal representative, the top official. Huge power. And the church, of course, was central.
Culturally, massive changes too, I assume. Language, religion.
Castilian Spanish becomes the language of power. Catholicism becomes the only permitted religion. Conversion efforts were intense.
The Inquisition even arrived.
In 1571, yes. Mostly focused on orthodoxy among Europeans and mixed-race people, but still a powerful tool of control.
Was there resistance from indigenous groups?
Oh, definitely. Throughout the colonial period, the Chichimeca War in the north was long and brutal.
Others too.
The Tepehuan Revolt, the Pueblo Revolt further north, major Maya uprisings. Resistance was constant, though often localized.
And Spain kept a tight grip on the economy, right? Trade was restricted.
Very tightly. Only two main ports allowed for foreign trade. Veracruz on the Atlantic, Acapulco on the Pacific for the Manila galleons.
To keep all the revenue flowing to Spain.
Exactly. But it wasn't foolproof. Pirates were a real problem. Campeche got sacked in 1663, Veracruz attacked in 1683.
So even the colonial centers weren't totally secure. And what about life within the cities? Like Mexico City.
It could be volatile. You had wealth, but also a large urban poor population. Take the 1692 riot in the Zocalo.
What triggered that?
It started over high maize prices, the staple food, but it blew up into wider anger against the authorities. Shows the underlying tensions.
Okay, so 3 centuries pass, resentment builds, the ideas of enlightenment, other revolutions.
It all starts to bubble up, especially among the Creoles, those born in New Spain but often shut out of top jobs.
Leading to the War of Independence.
From 1810 to 1821, a really complex, often brutal struggle, led by figures like Hidalgo Morelos.
And it finally ends Spanish rule. What came immediately after?
First, the brief First Mexican Empire under Iturbide. That didn't last long. Then the First Mexican Republic.
But independence didn't mean instant stability, did it?
Far from it. The early republic was incredibly challenging. Deep political divisions, Federalists versus Centralists. The economy was a mess.
Did Spain try to take it back?
They made a few attempts in the 1820s, but failed. Mexico's independence was eventually recognized, but internally, it was chaotic.
And external pressures, too. Like the pastry war. Sounds odd.
It does. France blockaded the coast in the 1830s over debts owed to French citizens, including a pastry chef.
Seriously?
Yep, it highlighted Mexico's vulnerability, and it's where Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna really starts to make a name for himself.
Oh, Santa Anna. He looms large over this period, doesn't he?
Dominates it, really. A national hero sometimes, a controversial figure often, in and out of power for decades.
This is also the time Mexico is dealing with issues in its vast northern territories, Texas specifically.
Right. They were trying to populate Texas, encouraged Anglo-American settlement, but clashes arose.
Yeah.
Culture, laws. Slavery was a big one.
Mexico had abolished slavery, but the settlers brought it with them.
Exactly. And then Santa Anna tries to centralize power in 1835, ditches the Federalist Constitution.
And that sparks rebellion.
Big time. Texas declares independence, but also the Republic of the Rio Grande, Yucatan. Leads to the Texas Revolution.
Which ultimately leads to the Mexican-American War a decade later,
1846, a devastating war for Mexico.
resulting in a massive loss of territory.
Nearly half its land, ceded in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848. California, Nevada, Utah, most of Arizona, New Mexico, parts of Colorado and Wyoming.
Huge. An incredible blow, and Santa Anna gets overthrown after this.
Eventually, yes.
Yeah.
In 1855, the liberal revolution of Ayutla ousts him for good, paves the way for the liberal reform era.
Okay, the liberals take power. What's their goal?
Modernization. They want to break the power of the church and the military, create a market economy, a more secular state.
Leading to the Constitution of 1857.
Exactly. A landmark document.
Uh-huh.
Separates church and state, guarantees individual rights, targets corporate land holdings, meaning the church and indigenous communities.
Sounds radical for the time. Did it go smoothly?
Not at all. Conservatives fought back fiercely, led to the War of the Reform, a brutal civil war from 1858 to 61.
The liberals won that war, but the fight wasn't over.
Nope. Defeated conservatives then looked abroad, invited foreign intervention, which led to the French.
And Emperor Maximilian, a Habsburg ruling Mexico.
Bizarre, isn't it? The Second Mexican Empire, backed by French troops. But the liberals, led by Benito Juarez, kept resisting.
Juarez, a key figure. Did they get help?
Eventually, yes. After the U.S. Civil War ended, the U.S. started supporting Juarez. France pulled its troops out.
And Maximilian.
Captured and executed in 1867. A powerful statement. The Republic was restored, with Juarez back as president.
But stability was still elusive. Enter Porfirio Diaz.
Right, Diaz, a hero from the fight against the French Cinco de Mayo fame. He challenges Juarez, eventually takes power in 1876.
And stays for a very long time, the Porfiriato.
Over 30 years, it brought modernization, railways, foreign investment, economic growth, but at a huge cost.
How so?
It was increasingly authoritarian, political repression, and massive social inequality. Land concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. The benefits didn't reach most people.
Which creates the conditions for revolution.
The Mexican Revolution, kicking off in 1910, sparked by Diaz rigging yet another election against Francisco Madero.
So Diaz is finally forced out.
Yes, he resigns in 1911. Madero gets elected democratically. Seems like a new dawn.
But it wasn't.
Tragically short-lived. Madero faced opposition from all sides, couldn't satisfy everyone. He's overthrown and murdered in a coup in 1913.
By Victoriano Huerta, this plunges things back into chaos.
Total chaos. Huerta's regime wasn't recognized by the U.S. under Woodrow Wilson. Wilson actually allowed arms sales to Huerta's opponents.
The Constitutionalists.
Led by Carranza, yeah. And you had other major revolutionary leaders like Zapata in the South fighting for land reform and Pancho Villa in the North.
So a coalition forms against Huerta.
Right. Constitutionalists, Zapatistas, Villistas. They managed to defeat Huerta's army in 1914. He flees.
Victory, but then...
The victors turn on each other. The revolution fractures. Now it's Carranza and Obregón versus Villa and Zapata. More civil war.
This is getting complicated.
It was incredibly complex and fluid. Obregón, Carranza's general, eventually defeats Villa militarily in 1915. Carranza becomes the de facto leader.
But Zapata keeps fighting in the South.
Yes, for land and liberty. And Villa, after his defeats, raids Columbus, New Mexico in 1916.
Which brings the U.S. military into Mexico.
Yep, Pershing's punitive expedition tries to catch Villa. They never do. It was a bit of a fiasco.
Meanwhile, World War I is happening. Germany tries to get Mexico involved.
The Zimmerman telegram incident. Germany proposed an alliance, promised Mexico its lost territories back if it attacked the U.S.
Did Mexico bite?
No, Carranza wisely stayed neutral. Too much going on at home.
And out of all this turmoil comes the Constitution of 1917.
A truly revolutionary document, still the basis of Mexican law, big on national ownership of resources, labor rights, education, land reform, and limiting the church's power.
But the fighting didn't just stop.
No. The human cost was immense. Maybe 900,000 dead. Zapata was assassinated in 1919. Carranza himself was overthrown and killed in 1920.
So who finally brings some semblance of order?
Álvaro Obregón becomes president in 1920. That marks a kind of end to the most violent phase, the beginning of consolidating the revolutionary state.
Okay, we're into the post-revolutionary era. The rise of the PRI party seems central here.
Well, first there's the Maximato in the late 20s, early 30s, where Calles is pulling the strings behind the scenes.
But then comes Cárdenas.
Lázaro Cárdenas, president from 34 to 40. Really significant. He kicks Calles out, implements major reforms, land redistribution.
And the oil expropriation.
1938, nationalizes foreign oil companies, creates Pemex. a huge moment of national assertion.
And relations with the U.S. improved during this time.
Especially during World War II, Mexico becomes a key ally, supplies materials, even sends the Aztec Eagles fighter squadron.
After the war, we get the Mexican Miracle.
Roughly 1946 into the 70s, rapid industrialization, economic growth, but inequality also grew significantly.
And the Green Revolution starts in Mexico around this time, too.
Mid-century, yeah, boosting agricultural yields. But progress wasn't always smooth. Think 1968.
The Olympics in Mexico City and the Tlatelolco massacre.
A dark stain. Brutal suppression of student protesters just before the games show the authoritarian side of the PRI system.
Part of the Mexican Dirty War period.
Exactly. A period of state repression against dissidents. The PRI's grip seemed unshakable, but cracks started showing in the 80s.
Economic crises. Demands for democracy.
Both. The 1988 election was widely seen as fraudulent, but the PRI held on. Then came the 90s, neoliberal reforms, NAFTA in 94.
The same day NAFTA started, the Zapatista uprising began in Chiapas.
Incredible timing, highlighting indigenous rights, poverty, the downsides of globalization for some, and then the 1994 peso crisis.
A tough decade.
But it culminated in a historic shift, the 2000 election.
Vicente Fox wins. The PRI loses the presidency for the first time in 71 years.
A massive moment for Mexican democracy. End of an era.
But the 21st century hasn't been easy. Crime, corruption, drug trafficking.
Huge challenges remain. Economic stagnation at times, ongoing efforts at reform, anti-corruption drives, privatization debates. It's complex.
And very recently, another historic milestone.
Absolutely. Claudia Sheinbaum, elected in 2024, becoming Mexico's first female president.
Yeah.
Sworn in October 1st.
A truly remarkable journey through history. Now, if you're finding this deep dive as fascinating as we are, don't miss out on our future stories.
Yeah, hit that subscribe button now on Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast. Keep exploring with us.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit to the land itself. Mexico's geography is incredibly diverse, isn't it?
Hugely diverse. It's the 13th largest country. Borders the U.S., Guatemala, Belize, massive coastlines on the Pacific, Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean.
Mountains, deserts, tropics.
All of it. Lots of high-altitude areas in the center and north. The big mountain ranges, Sierra Madre Oriental, Occidental, del Sur, the Trans-Mexican volcanic belt with the highest peaks.
Pico de Orizaba.
Right. All this creates 9 distinct geographic regions. And geologically dramatic, too. Remember the Chicxulub crater?
On the Yucatan Peninsula, the dinosaur killer impact site.
That's the one. A reminder of deep geological time right there.
And more currently, climate change is a major issue.
A huge one. Rising temperatures, changing rain patterns, more droughts, more floods, intense hurricanes, sea level rise.
Impacting water, farming, health.
Biodiversity, too. And Mexico is a mega-diverse country.
Meaning it has a massive percentage of the world's species.
Exactly. Including the most reptile species anywhere. But deforestation and soil erosion are serious threats to this natural wealth.
Okay, let's quickly touch on government and politics today. It's a federal republic.
Based on that 1917 Constitution, 3 levels. Federal, state, municipal. Presidential system, bicameral Congress, Senate, and Chamber of Deputies.
And the president is head of state and government.
And commander-in-chief, independent judiciary headed by the Supreme Court.
Politically, we mentioned the PRI, PAN, any others?
PRD was historically important, and newer parties like Morena have become very significant recently. Mexico is also a big player internationally.
Founding member of the UN, OAS, OECD, a regional power.
Definitely. Considered an emerging global power, too. It has its own defense industry, R&D.
And nuclear capability.
Technologically, yes. But it's firmly committed to peaceful use under the Treaty of Tlatelolco. Historically neutral, mostly.
It's at World War II, and law enforcement shifted recently.
From federal police to the National Guard in 2019. But human rights remain a serious concern. Abuses, disappearances, violence against journalists, femicide.
Though there's progress in some areas, like marriage equality.
Yes, same-sex marriage is legal nationwide now.
Economically, Mexico's a major player, 12th largest economy.
By GDP, yeah. Newly industrialized, developing country, big manufacturing sector, electronics, cars, oil via Pemex, though that's changing slowly, tourism, agriculture.
Renewable energy growing too.
Solar, wind, hydro definitely expanding. And tourism is huge, fueled by those UNESCO sites and beautiful coastlines.
Remittances are also important, right? Money sent home from Mexicans abroad.
A very significant source of income. But poverty and inequality are still major challenges, even with recent reductions in the poverty rate.
And infrastructure, roads, rail,
Extensive road network. Railways are developing, with big projects like the Tren Maya. Major airports connecting it globally.
Finally, let's talk society and culture. It's the most populous Spanish-speaking country.
Over 129 million people. Incredibly diverse population. Whole mestizo category is complex, historically charged.
Spanish is dominant, but indigenous languages are recognized.
Officially, yes. 68 linguistic groups, 364 varieties, spoken by over 8 million people. Nahuatl and Yucatec Maya are the most widely spoken.
And a large diaspora, mainly in the U.S.
Millions living abroad.
Mhm.
And while Mexico wasn't historically a mass immigration destination, that's changing somewhat.
Religion is mainly Catholic, but with unique blends.
Overwhelmingly Catholic historically, but growing diversity.
Yeah.
And lots of syncretism blending indigenous beliefs with Catholicism. Practices like Santeria exist too.
Culturally, it's this amazing mix of indigenous and Spanish influences.
With strong regional variations. The art history is incredible, from ancient murals to pre-Columbian masterpieces to the 20th century muralists.
Rivera, Kahlo, Siqueiros, Orozco. Iconic.
And a thriving contemporary scene. Architecture too, pyramids, colonial churches, modern masters like Barragan.
Literature, cinema.
Rich literary tradition, Octavio Paz, Carlos Fuentes, Juan Rulfo. The golden age of Mexican cinema was huge globally, and today you have directors like Iñárritu, Cuarón, Del Toro winning Oscars.
Music is central to mariachi, banda.
Norteño, ranchera.
Yeah.
So many distinct sounds. Rock and pop are huge too. Telenovelas are massive, exported everywhere.
And in sports, it's all about football, right?
Soccer is king, definitely. Hosting the World Cup for a third time in 2026, a record. But boxing is huge too, and lucha libre wrestling is a unique cultural phenomenon.
What an incredible panorama. Okay, let's try and wrap our heads around all this. We've covered millennia.
From the first civilizations, through colonial times, revolution, modernization, right up to today's complexities.
We touched on the culture, the geography, the politics, the economy. It's a lot.
But what really stands out, I think, is this theme of resilience.
Yeah.
Mexico constantly adapting, evolving, yet holding on to those deep roots.
From that Mesoamerican ingenuity to the revolutionary spirit, the drive to modernize. It's a story of constant transformation, isn't it?
Definitely.
So for you, our listener, we hope this deep dive gave you that quick but thorough understanding, sparked some connections. Remember Tenochtitlan, the largest city in the Americas.
A powerful reminder of the achievements here long before Columbus.
Which makes you wonder, considering this incredible history, its vibrant present, its challenges and potential.
What role will Mexico play globally in the coming decades? It's a really interesting question to ponder.
Definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of Mexico on Tell Me More Stories Told Us podcast.
We really encourage you to dig deeper into anything that caught your interest. There's always more to learn.
Absolutely. Mexico's story is vast and truly captivating. Thanks for listening.